It's a book you wrote, The Joy of Intimacy, and when I read this back cover, intimacy is an art. It's not something that just happens. It must be learned, cultivated, and practiced carefully if it is to flourish. And wow, I was kind of blown away when I read that cover. I was, to be honest, quite embarrassed and blushing.
Success.
Okay. Is it okay to talk about sex with a rabbi?
It's the only person you should talk to.
Huh.
Well, some rabbis anyway. It's interesting. The subtitle of the book, A Soulful Guide to Love, Sexuality, and Marriage. And actually what the book is all about is that love and sexuality are killing marriages. Seriously.
Love and sexuality are killing marriages.
Yes.
Okay. First of all, you know that I love you very much. You know that you've changed our lives very much. And with all due humility, what gives you the authority to talk about sex? Most 25-year-olds today have more experience than some of the most seasoned rabbis when it comes to sexuality in all the ways you would measure it.
Then let me ask you a question. So why are they so bummed out about it? Why are people so unhappy with their sexuality? Confused, frustrated, bored, guilty. I mean, every unhappy feeling. We're not doing well when it comes to intimacy. And the real problem that scared me, which caused me to write the book, if people don't get along, okay, you know, married couples, they have their differences, they don't see eye to eye, they argue, they fight, okay. But what's happening today is that in good marriages, functional, happy marriages that we would call successful, everything seems to be right. And yet the husband or the wife in a quiet moment will tell you that they feel alone in the world.
Now we're actually going to talk about marriages in a second, and I hope you're not going to kick me out of the room. We're actually going to be talking about porn in a second as well. But let's stay with the single person right now. When I grew up, right, the ideal vision given to us in the Western society was of the playboy man who has no commitment and he's got no obligation, and just different women coming in from out of town and having this wonderful sexual relationship. And I think it's fair to say that today almost everybody's got that option for that life, but they're very unhappy. What happened?
Exactly. What happened? So the media, or whoever it is, I'm not finding who to blame, tried to convince us that human relationships can be casual, they can be entertaining, they can be impersonal, and just strictly for fun, recreational. And we get this message 1,000 times a day from every direction. And after all of that, we are not relaxed, we are not enjoying, it's not working, because it's not true.
Now, you're a bit older than me. I thought, you know, you were here in the 60s and the 70s, right? Free love. In fact, I looked up the definition today before our meeting. Having sexual relations according to choice without being restricted by marriage or other long-term relationships. That was the definition of love in the 70s. And they tried it, and it didn't work, and it fell apart. And it seems like we're on that again. Is that where we are? Are we back to what it was in the 70s?
I think it's worse.
You think it's worse?
Much worse. Today, it's making people crazy. I mean, we don't know what it is anymore. It's very sad that people are not even interested in sex anymore.
You know, it's true. I have two friends who are unmarried. One of them's 30. One of them is in his 40s. And both of them are reporting to me that if they have sex once every 6 months, you know, twice a year, you know, that's good enough because they got to focus on their body and being healthy and on their business. And I'm like, wait a minute, what happened here?
So here's the scary thought. Is that how a society becomes extinct? I'm serious. Is that what happened to the Romans?
I don't know.
I think so. They just quit.
Okay, let's go through one more statistic. again, preparing for today's talk, before the 70s, adults were surveyed, and most of them had like 3 sexual encounters with different people. After the 70s, the number went up to about 5 or 6. In the early 2000s, I think it was like 2008, they did the same survey, and they found the average number was 11. And it seems like all of a sudden, since 2010 till now, in these last 8 years, that number's gone to like, I don't know, 100, 120 sexual relationships before people get married. It's almost like it was like going up, going up, going up, and all of a sudden, whoom, went way up. What happened there?
All bets were off. People got desperate and just threw caution to the wind and decided to maybe the quantity will make up for the lack of quality.
And what's happening out there today?
It's not working.
It's not.
No. I actually read recently that in England, the health department, the government, started a new division specifically targeting the problem of loneliness. It's a health hazard. People who feel alone in the world, their immune system crashes, and they're vulnerable to all sorts of diseases and stuff. Being alone is a terrible feeling. It's not loneliness, because these people are very active, they're very sociable, they're all over the place, they travel, they have friends, they have thousands of likes on their site, so the word like has lost all meaning, the word love has lost all meaning, sex has lost all meaning. I gotta tell you, Jackie Mason has this routine. Why does every movie have to have a sex scene? And they say because the movie is a depiction of reality in real life, and in life, people have sex. And he says, yeah, but they also have soup. Why does it have to have a sex scene, not a soup scene? And more people have soup than sex. Because nobody ever says, soup? No, I got a headache. So it's a really funny routine, but there's some truth to it. The real tragedy is that sex today has become soup. If you like it, you like. If you don't, you don't. But it's.
So now I'm hearing that if you have a lot of sex for the sake of having sex, it can lead to loneliness. Is there a connection between the two?
You put your hopes in something incorrectly, you're going to be disappointed. I mean, that's the old story with the false gods. We put all our hope, we invest ourselves in something thinking it's going to bring us satisfaction, contentment, happiness, something. And of course it doesn't.
Okay. So we're right now 2018. Are you saying people should only have sex with one person? Is that really...
No, I'm saying people should not have sex. People should have intimacy. Because the experts today are now starting to admit that putting all the emphasis on more pleasure has been very destructive. People don't need more pleasure. I mean, we have chocolate. We don't need more pleasure. We need more closeness. Sex does not produce closeness. Intimacy does. So what I'm saying is that sex has replaced intimacy, and we're paying a terrible price for it. Well, let me explain how this love and pleasure are destroying marriages. Because if I marry someone for their money, I say, I love you for your money, and then you lose your money, I'm not going to love you anymore. Well, I never loved you. It's a misnomer. I never loved you. I just loved the money. I tolerated you because I wanted the money. If you don't have the money, I have no tolerance for you. Right? I mean, that's obvious. Why is it any better if I marry you for love? If I marry you for love, it's not you, it's the love. I am married to the love. If the love is gone, I don't tolerate you. What are you doing here? I don't need you, I just wanted the love. So if I'm not getting love, you're irrelevant.
So you're not getting married for the money, you're not getting married for the love, sex, forget about it, go for intimacy. So you're getting married for the intimacy?
Yeah.
Huh?
So the first thing is, I have to marry the person not something about the person, not even the nice things about the person. So a guy says to me, I love everything about my wife. And I say, that's strange, because your wife wants a divorce. So what's going on? He says, no, I love everything about my wife. I said, but do you love her? He said, I love everything about her. I said, that was not the question. Do you love her? He says, what about her? Not about her. Do you love her? He says, I don't know what you're talking about.
You know, I know it's a tangent, but there's a dear friend named David who's dating now to get married, and he's really serious about marriage. And the last 2 or 3 girls that he's been going out with, he's been telling me, I love her for this and this and this. So if we can take a quick tangent, he's supposed to love her. That's how he finds the person he's going to marry?
See, it gets a bit complicated. Before you're married, you don't have each other. All you have are the things about each other. And that's how you decide who you're going to marry. By looking at all the things about them. But the marriage itself means you have moved past all those things, and now it's just us.
So when you get married to somebody, you can't yet know that you love them, so you go based on the things they have that you love. But once you're married, you develop a love of them regardless of what they do?
Something more than love. Something more than love.
What's more than love?
A bond that is unconditional. Love is always conditional. This notion of unconditional love is a monstrosity. You can't have unconditional love. If I decide I'm going to love you unconditionally, I've dismissed you. You're no longer relevant. Because no matter what you do, I'm going to love you. So you don't count anymore. Children hate to hear that. Parents say, oh, we love you unconditionally. And the kids say, oh yeah, watch this. And if that don't work, then watch. I'm going to get you to admit you don't love me, because love is not supposed to be unconditional. Love means a reaction to me. So if I'm behaving hateful, what are you loving? Don't you notice me? Don't you care what I do, what I say? So what is unconditional? We belong to each other. We are a unit. Like parents saying to their children, we're going to be your parents no matter what. I'm your mother. That is unconditional. You know how unconditional that is? I'm your mother even when I hate you. And right now I hate you.
But isn't God's love to us unconditional?
Nope.
It's not. There's condition to the love.
Sure.
But no matter what we do, he still loves us and forgives us and is willing to accept us back, isn't he?
Willing to accept us back means he'll love us again someday if we get our act together. God says, you are my children, you are my creation, what am I going to do? But right now I don't like you because you're not acting nice, you're not being good, you're not... So the love should never be unconditional, because then it's not real love. Emotions have to be fickle, have to be changeable. Always, that's the excitement of it. He loves me not, he loves me not. But the relationship is a fact, not a feeling. And a fact must be unconditional.
Okay.
So God says, you are my children. That's unconditional. But do I love you? If you act lovable, I'll love you. If not. So love is really killing relationships, because we're not marrying each other. We're marrying the love. Like this guy says to me, and the first time I heard it, I came to Minnesota as a yeshiva bacher, and without any experience at all. And this guy says to me, I'm getting divorced. I've had it. I don't need this. And naively I said, you don't need this. Get rid of this. Why are you getting rid of her? Why are you divorcing her? Because you don't need this. Of course, when he said this, he meant her. She was never a person. She was a this. And he doesn't need any more of this. He wants to try some of that. So they were never married.
You're going, with all due respect, completely against I'm almost 50. I've learned in the last 40 years. So saying I love you to your wife is not appropriate, is not the goal?
It works like this. You don't get married out of love. You don't need love from your spouse. Because if you really need love, you're not ready to get married. You still need to be nurtured or raised or loved. If you really need love, you go home to your mother. You get married when you don't have that need anymore. So what happens is this. You don't need love from your wife. You need your wife's love. That's very different. The reason you need her love is because she's your wife, so you want every part of her. So if she has love, you want it. If she has time, you want it. If she has devotion, respect, whatever it is, she's important to you. And once she's important to you, love becomes appropriate. Because if you think about it, it is so arrogant. It's so embarrassing. When I love you, you are the most important person in the universe. When I stop loving you, you're garbage. How arrogant is that? I mean, it is so abusive. My love makes you important. Without my love, you're nothing. Come on, what is that? So, I don't need love from my wife. But if she is my wife, I want her love. So, for example, would a mother ever say to her children, "You don't love me? Okay, you're not the only children in the world. The neighbor's children love me. They're cuter than you." No mother would ever say that, because she doesn't need love from her children. Love that she can get from somebody else? No. She needs her children's love, and you can't get that from somebody else's children. So if you need your wife's love, you can't get that from anybody else. If you need love from your wife, and you're not getting it from her, bad news. So the love, we worship love. Let's admit this. We have an idol. The idol of America is love. We'll do everything for love. We'll kill for love. We'll die for love. It's a religion. And as every idol in the past, it will disappoint, because it's not what we're hoping it will be. How do you convince an 11-year-old boy in America that the brother he hates is more important than the dog he loves?
Shoot the dog.
It won't convince him. We'll just make him depressed, right? Because he believes that his dog is more important because he loves his dog. Now, come on, something is wrong with that. Your love is more important than your brother. This is not good. Not good.
I remember seeing a movie many years ago, and there was a scene in there where he tried to kiss her. And she said, no, that's too intimate. I can have many other things with you, but we in the business never kiss because that's too intimate. Fast forward 17, 18 years later, and I'm with a friend of mine, and he shared with me that he gets good girls and he sleeps with them usually the same night. And it's interesting that they never kiss, though they do a lot more other things. Is that a negative way of kind of explaining what the book's all about? There's sex, but there's no intimacy? Is that what's going on in today's society? So let's define that. What's the difference? What's sex? What's intimacy? And what is your book trying to point out?
So it used to be that this kind of behavior was limited to those places you don't want to be caught. in those boarded up shops. It was pornography. Today it has become the standard. And again, even in good marriages, what goes on in the bedroom is pornography. They're imitating what they see in the pornography industry. So it has become very impersonal. It is about something. It is not about someone. And that's abuse. Even if it's gentle, even if it's mutual, it's still abuse. You're using a person. Now women are becoming sensitive to it. It took a while. And now women are saying, well, what was that? So here's an important, a really relevant, timely concept. What is going on with the harassment of women, with the sexual? Some people say it's the abuse of power. Men in power are abusing their power, and some women in power are abusing their power, and they're objecting to the abuse of power. That's not really the problem. Of course, I mean that's wrong, but that's not what's going on in Main Street. Some people say men have no respect for women. That's the problem. I'm not sure that that's really where it begins either, because there are men who are accused of harassment and of molestation, and they do respect women. They're really nice guys. So if you ask them, why did you do that? You know what their answer is? Do what? It was nothing. I was just having some fun. So I touched her. Look, it was nothing. That's the problem. The problem is we have no respect for intimacy. So we play with it. You know, a little intimacy, a little frivolous intimacy, a little half-hearted intimacy, partial intimacy. But it's nothing. And it started with, holding hands. It's nothing. Who was this guy who said, whoever named it necking obviously doesn't know biology. It was just a kiss. It was nothing. No, we were just hugging. It was friendly. When does it become a something? A man and a woman alone in a room. Is that intimacy? No, not if it's not your type. That's not. We have no respect for intimacy. So I got to tell you this story. Years ago, back in the 70s, there were women coming out of the 60s who rejected the whole bourgeois, thing with women being beautiful, and she neglected herself intentionally, with a vengeance, and she was a little difficult to be with. She was at our program, and she wanted to talk privately, so we go into this little office that I had, tiny little room with no window. She was sitting by the door, I was sitting by the desk, and she closed the door. I said, leave the door open a little bit. She said, why? I said, because a man and a woman alone in a room is not right. She started to cry. I mean, sobbing. And I thought I had offended her. Like I was attributing some not nice intentions. She finally pulls herself together and she says, that's the first time anyone treated me like a woman.
Okay. So what you're saying is the whole Me Too and everything that's happening with women today, though there are some really horrible people who did horrible things, you think the core issue is this objectifying of women?
Of intimacy.
Objectifying of intimacy. Where intimacy is not because of the person you're with. It's not even the act you're doing with the person. It's this fantasy in your mind that's been created through watching things on the internet.
It's a performance. It's an activity. It's ultimately selfish, self-gratifying, and I think it's abusive.
And that's where you think the world in general has come to.
Yes, and that's why no matter how good the sex is, you feel alone in the world. You're not bonded to anybody. You're not connected to anybody.
Because you were really abused through the quote-unquote sex that you had with that person you met a day or 5 minutes or 2 days ago.
Or even if you're married to them.
So it's even that level of lack of intimacy has entered the marriage
Yes.
because of porn or because of other reasons?
Well, because we're very materialistic. So the idea of things, getting something from somebody, is a natural consequence of being materialistically oriented. What are you getting from him? What's he doing for you?
And that's even going to sex. When you're having sex with when a person is having sex with his wife, what am I getting out of it?
So, some guy comes over to me and says, and he's staring at me for a while, and then he says, this beard, how do you sleep? With the beard under the blanket or the beard on top of the blanket?
That's a good question.
Yeah. So for weeks I couldn't sleep. And I tried it under the blanket and that didn't do anything. So I tried it on top of the blanket and that wasn't any better. So, once you turn it into a thing, and I've had the beard for 70 years. And until that guy asked me the question, it was fine. You turn it into a thing and all of a sudden it's uncomfortable, right? Husband and wife are together physically, and afterwards the husband says, so how was it? How was it? See, there's your problem. There was an it. I thought it was just us. Who's the it? What is it? We were together. We had each other. What's the it? And to prove that there's something wrong with this, you have to ask how it was. Weren't you there? Where were you when it happened?
Right, if you're asking about it, that means you were in your own world, not knowing your world. And that's the mistake within itself.
So obviously this did not bring you together. It came between you. Right? So the sages say in Pirkei Avos, a love that is dependent on something will not endure. A love that is dependent on nothing will last forever. But this thing that can get between you could be the love itself. Love is your thing? Well, then don't get married. You're already married to the love. You're not available to the person. So if you asked your grandmother or your great-grandmother, what happens in the bedroom? Mom and dad go into what happens in the bedroom? And your grandmother says, nothing. You say, come on, tell me. And your grandmother says, no, nothing.
She's actually saying the truth.
Yeah. Yep. It's the only correct answer. In a bedroom, no thing. It's just them. And if it's just them, how can it not be good? It's always good.
And you don't need to ask if it was good.
That's right.
Because you will know.
It's perfect. It's not a performance. There's no anxiety. It's not an Olympic event. So you want to ruin somebody's marriage, you just sit down and say, I'm just curious, sex with your wife, is it really good?
Beard over the beard, beard under.
Yeah. Is it really good? Like, compared to what? And all of a sudden, it's a thing, and now there's no thing between two people.
Okay, so let's take that to the level of sex and sexual and intimacy. And the book, right? You're talking about the joy of intimacy, not the joy of sex.
Right.
So let's go to the dating world. Just go out with the person and see if you have a good time. Don't try and sleep with them or do sleep with them, or we need a formula.
Yes, okay. So the first thing is, if you're looking to marry, and that's why you're dating, the first question you should ask is, what do you think of marriage?
Nobody knows anymore.
Well, then don't get married. Then don't do it. Don't marry someone who has no opinion on marriage. Because why would they get married?
Because they're lonely.
There was this old song about love and marriage go together like a horse and carriage. No, they don't. It's a terrible message. If you're already in love with somebody, don't marry him. Because there's no relationship between love and marriage. It's like saying, I love you. I love you. Well, in that case, we should live in Cleveland. Why? Where did Cleveland come from? I love you, you love me, we should get married. Why? Where did marriage come from?
So all these guys who love each other aren't getting married are actually doing the right thing because they don't know what marriage is. They're just having a great time together. Why get married? They don't need marriage. And that actually is a true statement. They genuinely don't.
And if you think marriage means we're going to have this permanently, no.
No, statistics say actually quite the opposite.
Yeah. Because you're getting a little too close when you're married. And you're not ready for that kind of closeness.
So should we give them the answer of why get married, or should we leave that for a different video?
Okay, so the first thing you do when you're dating, you want to know, what does the person feel and think about marriage before you want to know what they think of you. So the only reason to get married is because you believe in marriage. And then who to marry is just a technicality. So if you go with that attitude, look, I want to be married. I got to get married. Got to start a family. Oh, you feel that way too? Okay, let's talk. You don't feel that way? I got nothing to say to you. Yeah, but do you love me? That's totally irrelevant. What's love got to do with it?
That's your next book.
That's this book.
That's this book.
Yeah.
This book is about why you don't need love to get married? I thought it was about sex, and instead just go for intimacy.
Well, it says love and sex. But love is destroying marriages because it has become a thing. We're in love with love, not with the person we love. So if I had to make a bumper sticker, nothing about your wife is more important than your wife. Nobody buys that. In fact, people have a hard time. What is she if you take all the things away? What's left? What is she? We don't even know what that means anymore. And the same is true with religion, because they're so closely related. Is God love?
Yeah, God is everything, right? To an infinite.
But there are people who believe God is love. Well, then, love is God. You're worshiping love. You're not worshiping God. If God was not love, would you still worship him?
And if you didn't love to pray to worship him, are you supposed to pray?
Some people feel that God is power. What if God wasn't powerful, the most powerful? Would you still worship him? No. You're worshiping power. You're not worshiping God. What is the Jewish ideal? The Jewish ideal is, this is my God, so I worship him. Is he love? He's my God. Is he power? He's my God. So it's like a guy running down the street, and you say, what's the matter? Why are you running? He says, my wife isn't feeling well. I'm running to get the doctor. And you say, wow, you really love your wife. He says, Did I say anything about love? We don't get along so well lately. So you say, well, in that case, why are you running? Take your time. What's the hurry? We'll have a coffee, we'll talk a little, you'll go later. He would say, you're crazy. My wife needs a doctor. And you say, well, but you don't love her? He would say, what's love got to do with it?
You know, it's very interesting that you point this out. A very dear friend of ours, you know, the wife's living in one section of the house and the husband's living in the other section of the house, and they're not talking, and every time they are talking, it's in very loud noise. My voice says, oh, it's been that way for years, and he got sick. And she goes to every doctor appointment, and she takes care of them, and she feeds them, and she's fully there for them. And you ask them, well, do you love him? I was like, well, he's my husband. But you're living separate sections. You're always fighting. He's my husband. He's sick. I'll take care of him. And when he gets better, they'll probably start again. But right now, he needs, and that's how it is. It's not that way in today's society anymore.
That's very sad. It's very sad to think that our grandparents had better relationships than we have. That's shocking. We thought we were so much more sophisticated, so much more liberated. And
so if this free love has been around in the 70s and it proved out to be wrong, it proved out to be unsustainable, it was kicked out in the 80s and 90s and 2000, how is it back with a vengeance? What happened here?
it was never kicked out.
It's never kicked out.
It just slowly deteriorated from the inside. But I think that the book is so timely. You know, sometimes the book hits at the right moment. People are really drowning in this selfish, indulgent. They don't want it anymore. They just don't know what the alternative is. So it's not like I'm trying to convince people that they need something. The need is real.
And what's the need?
Closeness. We can't be alone anymore. And again, it's not lonely, it's alone.
But don't you fall into the same trap if you're getting married, if you're getting in a relationship because you want closeness? Isn't that the same as you want love? So you want now closeness, you don't want... No.
No. Closeness is not a thing. Closeness means I need you.
So that's what the book is about. It's not about how to have sex or not to have sex, to have love or to not to have love. It's to reframe the question of the relationship. Why even have a relationship? And what is the relationship between who and who for what purpose?
Right. So in the description of creation, the Torah says, therefore a man should cleave to his wife and become one. Not fall in love, become one. That's even more than closeness. That's super close. The need to become one means you will never be alone again. People want to overcome their loneliness, so they hook up for an evening, for whatever, so that they're not lonely. That doesn't take away the being alone, it makes it worse. Another person gone out of your life. It's really very, very painful because it goes against the grain.
Somebody is not going to read your book, but is going to listen to the next 2 minutes of whatever you're going to say. What do you want them to know about relationships?
If I had to sum it up, never be intimate with the lights on. Because if you can see, you will be distracted. The eye sees things. Intimacy cannot be seen. Turn the lights off. Remember in the old television shows, I don't know if you remember, when a couple were about to become intimate, what happened?
Close the door and turn off the lights.
They turn off the lamp, the bedside lamp. Well, like that was the norm. I'm going to be intimate with the lights on.
But then how can you video record?
Exactly. Pornography introduced the lights on. Because intimacy is not something you can see with your eye. So just that one little change can save a marriage. And if they had separate beds, it would help too. So that if you want to be intimate, show a little initiative. Like, at least get up. Not like, oh, okay, fine, we're here. So that's deadening too.
Thank you very, very much for your time, Rabbi.
The pleasure.